Yo. What's going on, GameLeap? It's Double Lift back at it with another Pro Guides ad, and in this video, we have got to break down some huge information right release regarding a bunch of important topics. Burst damage, items, new champions, ranked itself, and so much more that affects each and every one of us, so to stay up to date with what's in store, stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this. Now, before we get into the meatiness of the video, guys, make sure to head on over to the GameLeap website for hundreds of Challenger level courses, guides, and videos that will help you become the player you want to be. Links, as always, in the description and comment section. Alright, let's get into it. And one of the Riot devs released their thoughts on the current League of Legends landscape, and while doing so, also revealed what Riot's focus will be, not just in the next few patches in this season, but in the next 10 years as well. So they said regarding the state of the game, at a high level, we wanted preseason 2021 and our work throughout 2020 to be about strengthening and improving the foundations of League for the next 10 years. I wanted to take a quick overview of the state of the game, what we're feeling good about, and what we want to improve. Now, I want you guys to do the same. What are you feeling good about so far this season? And hopefully there is something. And what is it you think Riot has to improve in the near future? Now, the first massive topic the Rito dev talks about is something in the game that many, if not all of us, complained about when the preseason dropped, and that is burst damage. And if you're unfamiliar with what that looks like, take a look at me having a tough time dealing with it here. What the f— where did I go? I'm being serious, by the way, like, where did I go? Now, apart from looking like one of the 7 dwarfs, I think everyone would react in the same way to this, and you guys probably have already this season. Now, this is what Riot said in terms of the game's burst damage. In the last few patches, we've pulled bursts from multiple sources and are back to a reasonable state. Huh? Those still probably the higher end of acceptable. We're continuing to evaluate whether more changes should be made. Right, that's it. Someone send that clip to Riot, please. They're not wrong though, they nerfed a ton of items that were behind all the one-shotting in the game a few patches ago, you know, Duskblade, Night Harvester, Prowler's Claw, among a few others, but for AD carries in particular, unless you're Kai'Sa or Vayne, you still don't have much to defend yourself with. Yes, that's how the role should be, you know, you can't have the best of both worlds, but it seems there is still an imbalance here, and yeah, there's a reason why most marksmen are struggling in terms of win rate, because walking away from your turret gets you killed. Now, the Riot dev also says, generally, we try to stay in the range where burst-reliant classes, so mages and assassins, can kill an out-of-position carry, but not so bursty where they can do so without hitting a full combo or when missing important skills. Well, Mr. Dev, you're not trying hard enough, because at least just press Q on me there. And that combo was enough for me to lose close to half of my HP at level 9. It's like you've got to rush Merc Treads or plated steel caps to survive these days. What do you guys think of the current burst damage, by the way? And I want a number out of 10, so 10 being ridiculous and 1 being just shut up, coach. Alright, now the next topic Mr. Dev addresses is what essentially decides who wins and loses a game of League, the items in the game, and which champions spike harder than others. League of Mythics, as I like to say. So Riot said this: we updated the item system to increase strategic choice, satisfaction, and accessibility. We're generally seeing those goals met when we look at the game widely, but we're still focusing on follow-up work to realize the full potential. So what they're essentially talking about here is item diversity and preventing the game from being linear. So instead of, if you play X champion, you have to use this one build, to if you play X champion, you can choose between many a build. They continue, most champions and classes are seeing a wider set of item choices that suit different games, but there are some cases where choices are either not there or not clear and satisfying enough to feel there. We're seeing roughly 20% of champs crossing our mythic hard binding threshold. In other words, 80% of champs have more than one viable mythic to buy, whereas 20% only have one. Now, this is a pretty fair reflection, I think. The ADC mythics are all viable for the most part, I mean, especially in 11.3 when that comes around, because Shield Bow is getting buffed. Most top laners as well can build Trinity Force, Gauldrink, a Stride Breaker, or Divine Sunderer. Tanks now have Sunfire Aegis, Chem Tank, or Frostfire Gauntlet, but there are some items that are still weak compared to their counterparts. Everfrost being the most obvious one, and even after the Shirelles buff in 11.1, it is still unpreferred. So Riot elaborated on this. In 11.3, we're targeting fighter-class outliers like Gauldrink and Steris Gauge, blah blah blah. Balancing and reworking the new groundwork we laid in pre-season will eventually taper off into normal patchwork on items. Now listen to this, guys. Our hope is that by the end of spring, every champ has a range of satisfying, even if not totally perfect, choices. So by the end of May, no matter what champion or class we main, we should have more than one mythic item to choose from. Now this is great. And Mr. Dev finished by saying, as things settle, we're looking at a few opportunities to add new items to flesh out a few classes. This also sounds great and exciting because who doesn't want new items added to the game? It makes it interesting for sure, in one way or another. So from all of this information, Riot's plan is to improve the foundation of Season 11, so the Mythic items, and after that focus on more nuanced improvements. So if you play a popular champion like Kai'Sa or Yasuo, or a niche champion like Yorick or Aurelion Sol, Riot are thinking about everyone. Alright, now the next topic Mr. Dev fills us in on is one which fills us all with optimism. As with every season guys, there are new champions and reworks on the way for Season 11 as well, and here's what Riot said. This year, we're looking to improve the good for League overall side of new champs and VGUs. This includes things like strong and clear counterplay, very unique kits that justify each new addition to our roster, lower complexity on average, and more unique thematics to expand our IP even if less popular. So hopefully what this means is that we won't have to read an essay to understand what each new champion does, thank God. I also like the sound of strong and clear counterplay, but yeah, I wish Riot addressed some of the zero counterplay in the game at the moment. Kha'Zix. And how can we not get pumped over more thematics? We may have to spend a bit of cash to get them, and that's probably the reason Rito is planning to release them, but still most of these are red hot. For me, the High Noon and Bilgewater themes are my favorite, and what about you guys? What themes get you moist? Now the next topic is probably the most important one out of the lot, and I know for me, when I read this I was extremely happy, so I hope you guys are too. So here is what Riot said in regards to the future of ranked play. We're going to continue monitoring all aspects of rank to be sure that the experience is working as intended. We're also going to be watching this year to see if these improvements have positive long-term effects that make playing ranked a better experience over the course of a season. Now I don't know if some of you guys saw a few patches ago, or maybe you even experienced it yourselves. Some of us after winning a game were getting under 10 LP for it, and sometimes losing over 20, even during a win streak. That seems to have been fixed this patch, and there's Smurf queue now as well, so if you're playing in silver and gold, you're not going to lose as many games because the other team had a challenger. Now these Smurfs are also put into one queue and paired with other Smurfs. On the whole, Riot said, this has led to a smoother climb where players are facing more balanced teams, fewer Smurfs, and consistent wins becoming more important than win streaks. Now there are still some discrepancies, players being matched against players of a much higher rank, but solo queue definitely feels better. As long as Riot keep monitoring it, like they said, Season 11 is looking good. Now something else Riot is monitoring in Season 11 is apparent in every game we play, and that's snowballing. And we ain't talking Nunu. What we are talking about is getting 1 kill and turning it into 10. Now in the past, Riot have made it easier to come back from behind, adding bounties and increasing the range in which you can acquire experience from minions. So if you seem to still struggle with having an impact on a game when you're losing lane, well, Rito have your back. We know playing from behind in League can be very frustrating, even if you still have a realistic chance of making a comeback. Being at a disadvantage will probably never feel good, but ideally comeback opportunities are present and viable enough to keep games fun and exciting to the end. Now I think in higher levels of play, making a comeback is 10 times harder than in lower elo, but this has pretty much always been the case. One mistake and you lose. But in 99% of matches, yes, comebacks can and do exist, right? The main reason for this being that almost all League games are decided by who has the most kills, so players just fight on repeat until one nexus explodes. Now this season, and we've touched on it, the best snowballing champions are those that benefit the most from their mythic item. So if you think of Vayne with Kraken Slayer or Olaf with Gore Drinker, these champions have a much better chance of ending a game quickly than a Ryze with Luden's Tempest or an Ezreal with Divine Sunderer. So Mr. Dev addressed this. One of our preseason goals was to avoid power creeping the item system, and increased snowball would be one of the worst symptoms of messing up because finishing items earlier than your opponent would give you an even bigger advantage. Now once Riot succeed in ironing out the mythic items and bringing them all into play, right now I still see 0-5 Camille's one-shotting champions just because they have Trinity Force, the snowballing on the Rift will be far less of a concern. Now guys, before we get into the last couple of topics we have to bring to light, one last friendly reminder to head on over to our website GameLeap.com at the end of this video. If you want to learn from the best and what it is they do to keep them in Challenger, do yourself a favor and join thousands of your fellow summoners by signing up. Links down below. Alright, now the next topic Mr. Dev discusses is again something that influences all of us, and that's position balance. So making sure all the roles are similar in terms of influence on a game's outcome. Now Riot pointed out one role in particular that they think needs tweaking, the jungle, and do you guys agree with this? Now here's what they said. One thing on our radar for the future is the jungle position. It's one of the most influential, powerful positions, and Mr. Dev acknowledged that though they have seen a positive reaction to the new jungle item experience of buying a jungle starter and getting to your build right away, there are still still more ways like this for us to improve the appeal of the role without undermining the core skill and flexibility that current junglers love. Now this is awesome because I think most of us see the jungle role as, well, just unattractive. You know, as a jungler, you are that scapegoat. As soon as one of your lanes dies to the enemy jungler, it's jungle diff, or if they die in a 1v1, you get spam ping for not going mid. I'm sure we've all experienced it at some point, so if Riot can find a way to encourage more players to play jungle and enjoy it, the better off League will be. Okay, so the last topic we have to touch on, guys, is something that we all have to know about, and this is the new item shop. Now, I think most of us are familiar with the new shop by now. You know, the recommended tab, the all items tab, the side panels, and Mr. Dev said, I would still estimate that our new shop is only 90% of the way to completely finished. Now that we're using modern tech, whatever that means, we hope to continue adding more and more functionality over time to make the shop usability feel like second nature. So that last 10% is a lot apparently, and if that's the case, then hopefully in the not so distant future, we won't have to worry about spending extra time searching through the shop maze for our items. All in all, guys, the topics here tell us that Riot are in tune with what the major issues are with the game at the moment, and they seem to be tackling and improving them, which is obviously great news. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe and turn on all notifications. This has been Coach Ease, and until tomorrow's up, peace.